pretty interesting where we're going to represent our coaches, mentors, business coaches, life coaches, even motivational speakers
Right.
to connect with what they are doing and how they can help these consultants in such a tough time, as we just spoke about earlier. It's COVID 1.5, the circuit breaker 1.5.
Right.
And we are looking at engaging yourself today to get to know more about you and how
Sure.
you can add value and create immense knowledge and skills to these financial consultants. So without further ado, Dr. Darren, perhaps you could start with introducing yourself.
So, so I prescribe strategies for business leaders, for team builders, as well as for aspiring individuals to help them achieve their breakthroughs. And I do this through mindset shifts, through improving their performance, as well as ultimately to help them to shift their mindset to a better place, whereby they can perform much better and achieve much better results. And how I do this is really through my keynote speaking, my workshops, as well as my one-on-one executive life coaching. So
Right.
I've been doing this since 2011. So it's almost close to about 10 years now. And I think the kind of clients I have, they are usually executives. The kind of clients that I have in my coaching is usually middle management, upper management. And I think the question that they have always for me is always how can they be better? And so it's always about this word and this whole idea of about how to be better, uh, not only to be better for themselves, but to be better so that they can be better to help their clients.
Right, right. That's great. Thanks, Dr. Darren. So just to get off, right, what was your inspiration or what led you towards this path of coaching
Right,
and mentoring?
right. So so my purpose of doing this when I started all of this was really just to share my story. So I am a stroke survivor. I had my stroke when I was in the year 2000, the year that I graduated from medical school. I've always wanted to be a surgeon. I never thought of actually becoming a speaker or becoming a coach. Uh, my lifetime dream was always to be a neurosurgeon, actually.
Mhm.
But of course, in the year 2000, I had a massive stroke. And to cut the long story short, I wasn't able to become a doctor simply because if I was to continue that journey of being a doctor, then the SMC, the Singapore Medical Council, they were just not very sure, and they were actually worried that if there were any emergencies in hospital, whether or not I would be able to respond quick enough, respond fast enough if there were any emergencies. So I was put onto admin, healthcare administration, but of course, I mean, between administration and doctoring, it is completely different works, right? Completely field of work. So even though I was in the same sector, healthcare sector, but the work that I was doing was completely different from what I wanted to do. Again, I decided to move away from it, and I decided to actually to come out and do something that was where I was able to add value to people. So the first place that I went to was actually to set up a learning center in 2009, which is called Potter's Clay Education. And
Mhm.
during that time, I mean, many people asked me to share my story, and I did this pro bono to the schools, even to organizations,
Mhm.
and I felt that my story actually impacted people, and that was when in 2011 I set up a mindset transformation clinic, and I decided to do this in a bit more professionally. I decided to do this really more seriously,
Right,
because I realized that there is a space whereby people needed to know that disability is only in the mind, that ultimately, right, despite or in spite of whatever setbacks we have, there is a possibility to we can actually get better.
right.
Uh, yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Darren. It was just, I have a question on that note there. So, in that point of navigating such an adversity and coming through that, I'm pretty certain that there was a gap. There was
Mm,
a gap that you had to go through, and that must have been pretty painful in
mm,
both emotionally,
right.
physically as well. And
Mm,
how did you then create that tipping point where you moved from I'm not going to be bound by the fact that I had a stroke and the fact that I couldn't go through being a neurosurgeon, and I'm not going to accept my what was given to me, which was administrative. From there to start on your own learning center and to inspire people. During that gap, what pulled you out? What got you through those tough times?
Sure. Thanks for asking the question. Actually, that gap that you so-called speak of is actually, I wrote about it in my second book, which is called The Prisoner of Hope. And actually during that season whereby the so-called the gap that you're talking about, I experienced it the most when I was in the hospital in 2000. I remember there was one evening whereby I was just it was a very very hot evening, just like the weather nowadays. I mean nowadays without the aircon, it is almost uncomfortably bearably hot, right? And so I remember that evening, it was a very hot evening, and all I wanted was just to turn on the aircon. And I could still remember that the switch was actually right just in front of me. I could actually see it just a little bit further. I cannot touch it yet, but it is just in front of me. But because of at that point, I was still in a way. I just woke up from my coma. My body was still very totally immobilized. I wasn't able to speak because of my stroke, and so I wasn't able to shout out for help. I wasn't able to say, nurse, I just want to turn on the aircon. Could you help me? I couldn't even do that. I couldn't move my body to shift my body when I could grab the controller. And that was when I realized, wow, I mean, for someone who studied so much, for someone who in a way excelled in almost everything that I did in school, to come to a point whereby I cannot even turn on the aircon. I mean, that was something that was actually quite devastating for me, and quite in a way remarkable, right?
Right.
And I think it broke. I think I broke down, at that moment. But I think during that point where I broke down, I also realized, and I was very very thankful at the fact that I was still alive, because for one thing about being a stroke survivor, the day after the stroke is actually a day for an opportunity to improve. Because unlike, let's say, terminal illnesses, whereby a day after is usually a day whereby the body deteriorates, but for stroke survivors, for us, the day after, the week after, the year after, is actually an opportunity to actually be better. As long as we have the correct mindset, as long as we have the correct goals that we are setting, as long as we have the correct strategies that we have in mind. And so that's when I decided, okay, let's stop having any self-pity. Let's just really set goals and work on it. And that's when I started to climb out of the situation.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Darren. I think that's a very important point to look at, right? I mean, I'm glad you mentioned this and shared this with us. I'm very grateful for that.
Right.
I don't think we had this conversation at any one point of time, that the history and the journey of you, and of course that gap that you have fell into and you got yourself out. It's interesting that you mentioned that the day after or the week after, the month after such a devastating blow such as stroke is actually an opportunity.
Yeah.
And if we take into the context of our insurance professionals, whether they are financial consultants or agency leaders, it's always a brand new start the next day. And again, with the way we work, it's always the next year is a new year. We start from zero again, right? And in that context, how do you think that these past experiences that certain of these consultants and agency leaders have, and how does that impact them moving forward? I'm pretty certain that the past patterns have an impact. From your perspective, how can they break away from this through your programs and through your sessions as well?
Right. So for me, I've always in a way believed and I really understand that the value of history, the value of our experiences, is really for us to reflect and to learn. Our experiences is not meant to pull us down. Many people look at our experiences and they say that, oh, because I wasn't able to do this, therefore I will never be able to do this. And that's where I remind my clients that ultimately, right, past experiences are only meant for us to reflect on so that we can be better using those experiences that we had. Our past experiences are never meant to pull us down or to drag us further, deeper down. It is always meant to actually to lift us up. So that is something that I always remind my clients. From that framework, then we talk about the present, right? What is the value of the present? The present then, right, is really for us to take stock as to like what we want to do right now, right? Who are your clients that you're working with? Who are your collaborators that you are also working with that can help you to be better, to work better, to achieve better results? And then of course there is a future, which is what is it that you want to achieve at the end of the day? Yeah. So I think ultimately the past, the present, and the future, they are all important, vital, but we need to actually just break them up into different segments because they all represent different journeys of our life, and different strategies needs to be used for all three of them.
Right, right. Lovely. That's lovely. Well said as well. In your courses, in your programs, do we do that past exploration as well? And do we look at how we address each one?
Yes. So I need to be very clear that I am a coach. So I am not a therapist,
Right.
neither am I. So for me, I am never bothered about looking at the past
Hmm.
and then trying to resolve issues from the past.
Right.
Those are things that therapists do.
Mhm.
For me, I am a coach. For me, the reason why I look at the past is so that I can then gather enough history so that I can then plan a strategy to move forward into the future.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that is very important as well. If people dwell into the past for too long and get into that victim stage or victim consciousness stage, then
Yeah,
it pretty much detracts them from moving towards the future and where you're
that's
going
right.
to take
Yes,
them
ultimately, yes,
in that,
correct.
in
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
in that path.
Mm.
And if we look at how these the past, present, or future, let's talk about the present then, and
Sure.
where the advisors or the leaders are now challenged, as we mentioned, circuit breaker 1.5 or 2.0.
Right.
In this current situation, what can they do? What suggestions would you give them in order for them to just move away from this current situation and then amplify themselves towards a better future?
Right. Right. I again, I think when it comes to the people that you deal with, I think generally there are two groups, right? There is one group whereby the high flyers, and really without any coaching, I mean these people will still fly. I'm sure you have friends and and you have colleagues that they are just in the space, right? Whereby they know exactly what they're doing, and really for some of them maybe they've already achieved their targets even right now midway through the year,
Yeah.
right? What do they do, right?
Mhm.
So usually then for such people who are already into the game, into the flow, succeeding, my advice is always to, because they are already in the flow, is to continue to be in the flow,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because I think nobody can say that, okay, I have enough success and then that's it, right? Everybody wants more. Everybody wants more. And I think for such clients, for me, it is always to help them to maintain in that peak performance state, right? To remain in a peak performance state, and also to challenge themselves. Okay, now that you are here, do you want to achieve more,
Right.
right? So this whole idea of just getting more and just challenging yourself, right? Then there's always the other group who are in a way wanting to achieve more, but maybe they're finding it difficult,
Mhm.
whether be it personal issues, or whether be it issues that that we don't know. But how can we still help them? And I
Right.
think then this is where strategies come in. That's where I would then come in, and then right we look at the person face to face, right? Because I think usually for such situations, using a very generic approach, right, actually right doesn't really work. For coaching sessions, right, we actually go down to individual person and we ask them, okay, what is the situation right now that you're facing?
Mhm.
why is it you're not able to perform? And usually, right, you'll be surprised at the kind of reasons they give you. A lot of them are actually valid reasons. That actually, right, because there isn't any authentic conversation, nobody knows. But the minute we start that authentic conversation, actually, right, as a coach, it is actually easy to then to help them reflect and help them to direct to the outcomes that they want to achieve.
Right. Lovely. Thank you, Dr. Darren, for that one. I again have a question on that. I'm sorry, I have got quite a few questions.
No problem.
Off
Thank
track.
you.
But you mentioned two different groups of people: those who are already on that path and route towards success, and in that direction, how do they amplify themselves and move themselves to a different level? And the other group of individuals who are hungry for it, but just don't know how, with certain limitations that they have, right? Between these two groups of individuals here, is there some common factor that you see between them, between intention and desire with the actual execution of it?
So I will tell you the one thing that they both want, and they want success.
Right.
You know, everybody in this world wants success. I have never spoken to anyone who tells me, Darren, I don't want success. You know, teach me how not to be successful. So far in my line of work, nobody has ever asked me that, or never, no one has ever told me, right, Darren, can you coach me as to how not to be successful?
Right.
So I am very sure that everybody in this world wants to be successful. The problem is, of course, how do we then move from this current situation into the success that you want to achieve? So I think this is where coaching comes in. This is where people like me, you know, come in to help them, you know, shift their perspective, shift their framework, to then help them achieve what they want to achieve.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Darren. And on that note as well, in terms of the sustainability of these programs that you have and the courses that you have, how long does a consultant or an agency leader need to go through this entire process? And are there regular follow-ups that you have with them to track their progress as well?
Right. So again, I run workshops. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a coach. So for the keynote, it's just usually one-off, right? 45 minutes, and then it is a round performance. Everybody gets inspired, and in the inspiration, the whole idea is to then through the words that I speak, maybe right, or usually all we need is just one word or even just a phrase that I say that hopefully, right, sparks a person to then to move on, right? And then there is the workshops, and then the workshops is just strategies that I then suggest for people to take. And then, of course, a longer approach would be the executive life coaching. And the executive life coaching is usually a half a year program. And so the half a year program will be basically, I would then I will not spoon feed them, but basically what I will do is I will be a friend. I will come alongside with them, and then basically, you know, ask them, you know, what is it that you want to achieve? How do you want to achieve? And ask them questions. You know, a lot of times, many people, like I said, are not achieving their success simply because they are not looking at different perspectives of the situation.
Right. I like what you said, walking beside them and being by their side and asking these questions, which then trigger the response and action as well. Because I think what we see in most times, and financial consultants or agency leaders might be guilty of it. I may have been guilty of it too in my time, where we either walk ahead, too far ahead, with the people that we work with, or we lag behind tremendously.
Right.
We never feel that there is a huge gap in between, and to match that would be where coaches and our life coaches, business coaches, and mentors come in.
Right.
And I feel that there is a great importance right now at this stage, not just with the COVID. As you mentioned, there are people who are extremely motivated, and people are on that process. I think everyone is in work in process of progress as well, right? what would your key takeaway be today, Dr. Darren, for these individuals who are going out there, putting themselves out in this noble industry? What would be your key takeaway that you want to share with them?
Again, my favorite personal quote, really, disability is only in the mind. I think what is more important is always to decide on yourself the goal that you want to achieve for 2021.
Mhm.
Even though the goal may seem to be extremely super far-fetched, but still, decide on a goal that you think that you are personally motivated to pursue, and then be determined to then to achieve it, right? And really, it's always about day by the work the work that you do, the things that you do every day, rather than the things that you're doing every week or every month. It is never about the thoughts that you are thinking about next month.
Right.
It is always about what you're going to do today that actually matters.
Well, that's lovely. Thank you, Dr. Darren. Truly appreciate that. And I really do hope that we have more sessions with you and your keywords, your experiences, the inspiration that you're going to share truly reaches out to the consultants and agency leaders. And through that, I hope that they too share it with their clients,
Thank you.
advocates of what you do as well. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you soon, Dr. Darren, and thank you
Sure.
for your time as well.
Thank you, Dr. Darren.